We're wrapping up a warm couple of days in California, heading into a wet start to April. What we're expecting as we kick into the new month. Now, the atmospheric rivers that are poised in the Pacific are generally moving north of California, but that's all about to change as we start to see a bigger pull in from the Pacific and more of these making a direct hit into the Golden State. That will really start to ramp up by the weekend into next week. We'll see a couple of weak systems moving on through, but the big one is off the coast and hits us for the middle of next week with a much likely wetter setup for the start of April throughout extreme northern California and parts of Oregon. For central and southern California, it's still looking wetter than average. As for the temperatures, we're going to be back to that likely cooler scenario for extreme northern California, southern California staying just a tinge more on the warmer side. We've got our weather playlist on ABC 10 Plus. If you haven't downloaded already on TV, make sure you do so. We've got our extended forecast, just like what you're seeing right here, as well as weather explainers and weather and climate specials. It's live, local, always on. Again, ABC 10 Plus on TV. All right, let's dig into it. Just out today, the State Water Project upping those allocations to 40% from where it was just about a month ago. It was about 35%. And that's largely due to the wet, cold storms that moved through March, as well as above average reservoir levels and an increase in our snowpack, which we'll see the numbers in just a moment. Now, the final allocation coming in May or June, but given that we're going to see this wet start to April, things are really looking good. Again, building our water year, we're just in the tail end here of when we start to see that peak snowpack for this year, a really key component for water in California because it's our free savings account of frozen water. Once we get into the warmer months, it starts to melt off, and that's when we see the water at its highest demand. So once that snow melt starts to happen, it goes into our reservoirs and then is delivered throughout the state. It's called our California Water Conveyance System. It is completely complex. If you look at this map, look at all the entities where we're either storing or moving through water all the way south into Southern California through the California Aqueduct, along with many canals that are feeding the entire state with water. So this is a really important part to take that water and store it up north where most of the water actually falls in California, and then try to at least forecast how much water we can send south into the drier months. And now our Sierra snow water equivalent, if we were to take that entire snowpack, melt it down, how much water would we get out of it? Right now, we're at almost 120% of average for the Northern Sierra. Central Sierra, we're looking at about 90%, and again, 87% for the Southern Sierra. That's going to put our statewide average to date at 96%, and we're really getting close to that April 1st date. So those numbers are, for all intents and purposes, going to be pretty much the same. As far as our major reservoir supplies, and there are many reservoirs throughout the state, we're just highlighting some of the bigger ones throughout parts of North and Central California. Trinity, 84% of average. Shasta, 86, or I should say 84% capacity. So that's how full it is. 86% capacity for Shasta, 86 for Oroville. Folsom, we're at 71%, and all intents and purposes, about 100 to 125% of average up north. For the central part of the state, about 80 to 85% of capacity here, and about 100 to 125% of average to date. We're a little bit drier for Millerton. That will continue to show some improvements, especially with some of that snowpack coming up recently. Statewide precipitation. Now, these numbers don't really tell the complete picture. That's why the Department of Water Resources is trying to remind folks, yes, we rely on precipitation, but it's a whole slew of things that we're putting into the bucket, including our reservoir storage, our precipitation, our snowpack, groundwater. It's a whole complex, diverse portfolio that really helps us diversify where those assets are for our water supply. So in the north, again, we were really benefiting from some early season storms, and that brought those numbers up quickly, whereas the central and southern part of the state has been a little bit more shy of seeing some of those bigger atmospheric rivers coming through, particularly for the southern part of the state. So we have seen those deficits grow, despite the fact that March has been a fairly decent month for us. It's just the dry January. That's what pretty much did us in for sheer precipitation numbers. Again, when we look at the entire portfolio, things look much different because we've had two relatively decent, if not above average years, putting a lot of storage into places where we need it the most. Our average monthly rainfall, though, is about to drop off. In April, we see only about 1.5 inches of rainfall for downtown Sacramento. By May, it's less than 1 inch, and it's less than 1/4 inch by June. Once we get into July and August, it's pretty much negligible until we start the whole water year over again, which begins October 1st. So our precipitation forecast over the next 7 days, we're only looking at about 1/4 inch to 1 inch of rain throughout Northern California, about 2.5 to 3 inches, though, through parts of the northern foothills and the northern Sierra. So decent enough. But again, we're really looking towards a bigger weather event next week. So for tomorrow, we kind of kick things off with that first weaker weather system. It will bring us a slight chance of some thunderstorms north of I-80 through the northern Sierra and parts of the northern Sacramento Valley. Along with that, we'll see some occasional gusty winds as these weaker weather systems pull on through. Thursday in particular could be dealing with some of those gusty winds. So where we don't see some of the wetting rain, allergy sufferers, just beware. Those pollens are going to be floating around. Wind gusts over the high country are going to be closer to about 40 to 45 miles per hour. We start to see things calm down ever so slightly late Thursday, but we've got more rain in the pipeline here. As far as these weather events coming through, they're just not going to be too powerful or impactful. In fact, we're not really even expecting much of an impact Wednesday into Thursday. Hit or miss showers certainly possible. We'll see some better precipitation coming through late Thursday into Friday. This is also when we start to see some of that colder air move in. We've been sitting with highs in the 80s for the past couple of days. Now we're back to reality and a little bit below average. With that colder air, we'll start to see that snow level drop to about 6,500 feet on Thursday. What that means is we're going to be seeing snow on the passes. Again, just be prepared. Keep everything in the car that you need for those winter driving conditions up in the high country. And then we see better precipitation kind of gearing up along the coastline for our Friday forecast. So when we talk about precipitation numbers, about 1/10 inch to 1/4 inch down low, closer to about 1/2 inch to over 1 inch for parts of the foothills and then the upper elevations of the valley. Talking about snowfall numbers, not bad considering we're at the end of March, about 1 to 10 inches possible by the time we get to Friday. Weather models have been getting more aggressive with the precipitation totals with these first incoming systems. So that was kind of the accumulation over a couple of days. But the big weather system is still looming off the coast. That again hits in the middle of next week. That's how we kick off the month of April with a wetter than average outlook. So when we look at snow over the next 10 days, we're talking about 1 to almost 5 feet of snow coming to the Sierra. That's on top of what we've already had, and we're very likely to jump up above that 100% of average for the statewide outlook. The weather changes now where we have moderate to high confidence, cooler than average outlook, wet pattern developing where the lower confidence comes in and weather models have been flipping around for the past couple of days. The timing of the precipitation and the totals, as well as precise snow levels. Those are kind of the timing situations where you want to get as close to the event as possible. But when we look deep into the forecast, we've got a big sporting event coming into downtown Sacramento. That's going to be the A's playing their home field in Sacramento for the next couple of years. And it looks like their home opener has a chance of showers. I will say the good news here is that we have been backing off on the rain chance for that day and first pitch. It's looking like we get a break in between these systems there for next Monday for the home opener, around 66 degrees for that first pitch. Now, the reason why we've been dry, we've been warm, we're under this ridge of high pressure, sinking warming air storm track well to the north of us, but this all starts to shift. In fact, we're starting to see a likelihood of more moderate precipitation coming our way with that 8 to 14 day weather hazards outlook. And this is primarily due to that Wednesday weather system coming through. Now, there is some indication it will be hitting central and right around the south central coast of California. But there's still a ways out and a lot of uncertainty with that particular weather element. It appears that we will see some decent amount of snowfall, though, so some moderate impacts by the time we get into next week. Again, more to come on how this will all unfold with more precise details. Here's a look at the futurecast, and I've got it paused here as we kind of open things up. We say goodbye to that ridge of high pressure and hello to the cool and showery weather. Friday, we bring in more rain and snow for this week. A little bit of a break over the weekend, then Sunday, we start to see more in the way of wet weather. On Monday, again, a nice little break in between weather systems. But by Tuesday evening through Wednesday and Thursday, it's very likely we're right back into that wetter weather outlook. So looks like we're not quite done with those spring showers yet. It is kind of nice for allergy sufferers because it backs off on some of the pollen that is coating our cars and our driveways right now. On and off rain shower chances start up on our Wednesday, continue right through early next week, where we actually get quite a bit cooler, especially Tuesday into Wednesday when our highs are only topping out in the low 60s. There's that A's forecast there with our first pitch just after 7 o'clock on Monday. And then we're still seeing a slightly showery forecast into the end of next week as well.